Let's record to the cloud.
We got it.
Yep.
We got that.
Hello, I'm Bradley. I'm the 1 year and 3 month toddler of the town, and just here, trying to be resourceful.
All right, and Tricia,
Hi, Tricia Fowler, town resident. Met, had a yard sale this weekend. It was great to meet you.
Peter,
Peter Zorchak with Stone Environmental.
Tori,
Tori Helwig, Lamoille County Planning Commission.
JB.
Hi, Julie Beth Hines, Birchline Planning.
And in the room, Jim Ryan, President, Chair.
Seth Jensen, Lamoille County Planning Commission.
Alan Carpenter, Select Board.
Bruce Wheeler, Planning Commission.
Linda Martin, Select Board.
All right, welcome all. So folks should have gotten the agenda and minutes for tonight. And first of all, I wanted to just thank everybody for last week. I thought we had a very successful roundtable. It was very well attended. I thought the audience was overall very positive. There were some good questions, and I think everybody on Zoom and in the room did a great job in representing the committee. And I was very pleased with how it went. And I heard some good feedback right after the meeting, and some follow-up emails. So thank you, everybody. And so before we go over we'll start going on the agenda. Any other items that we'd like to add to the agenda?
I just want to quickly talk about the bond vote. It could be, I don't know, updated timeline to June 11th, but whatever, it has to do with the bond vote.
Okay. Anything else? I had a couple of things that I was just thinking about the roundtable meeting last week, and a couple of questions and conversations that came up that I thought maybe the committee should address more fully in our meeting. And that's the question about system capacity. I thought it was a pretty thoughtful question that someone had about asking, do we just have enough capacity for the existing buildings in the village? And we kept talking about future growth on the one hand, and on the other hand, we were just saying we had fairly limited capacity to increase. And I think Peter mentioned maybe 10% extra, but he also mentioned that it was the estimates are pretty conservative, and we may have more than that. And then I was starting to think about the potential additional capacity because of the buyouts. If we have a half dozen buyouts in the village, that might free up some more capacity. I'm just thinking if other businesses to come in, and that what would they have to go through in order to hook up or expand their original allocation, and just thinking about those numbers, and thinking about our pre-treatment option, and also thinking about our grant applications that are still pending. And if I was doing my calculations correctly, and Seth and Tori can correct me, but if we get everything that we applied for, we would have 1.685 million in surplus. I don't know if that sounds about right. And that's based on the 4.09 million estimated capital cost. And I was just pragmatically thinking, this would obviously be after the bond vote, but is there opportunity to size the system a little bit larger at the school, like maybe putting in another cell, for example, so something short of pretreatment? And could the grant money be used for that? If we had the bond vote and the two votes were successful and we got the additional grant money, say we got an extra $1 million, could we expand initially? So that's the question I would pose to Peter and Tori and Seth, knowing the grants as well.
From an engineering perspective, I think the answer is I don't know yet. And it probably relies on some of those possible regulation changes that may or may not come to fruition. It probably also comes back to looking a little closer at some nuances mostly in those regulations, really, and how we end up laying out essentially, any indirect discharge system needs to have essentially two systems, so double capacity. The nuance with drip dispersal is that you don't want to have two dual alternating systems that you're changing every year. You instead have multiple zones that you're rotating. So the tricky part is kind of around how the new rules get written with that, whether or not we have to build a full 2 times of what we need in terms of zones and be rotating them all, or if we can be more like 150% of it and what that means in some of the design flow numbers. So I haven't really looked deep into a lot of those nuances since we wrote the PER. and quite frankly, the draft regulations haven't moved super far in that amount of time. With that said, I think we're getting closer to those draft regulations getting pushed out to the public in the ICAR process. So I'm kind of just rambling to say that there are a bunch of little pieces of that would make a huge difference in capacity. I think if we really wanted more capacity short of those things, it gets pretty tricky because of the forested area where the existing school leach fields are. We could possibly clear some of that and probably do some grading changes within there and maybe get some more zones in there. But I don't think that's really something we've presented to the school, so I'm not sure it makes sense to really go there right now. But if there really is, and I say if there really is, because don't forget we're still kind of working on our cost estimates and trying to refine those a little bit. But if there really is 1.6 million in surplus, I'd have to look at it all, but we probably can afford to do the pretreatment.
Yeah, I think I had that question last week, and then related to the grant funding. Could if we have the surplus, could we repurpose, or I don't know if that is allowed, and depending on the grant, each individual grant, somehow increase our capacity with the surplus rather than give the money back?
Could I just share 2 kind of thoughts on that? So on the capacity question, Peter gave an engineering answer, and I'm going to give the planning perspective on that. The 10% additional capacity, certainly if you have the more capacity you have, the more opportunity you have for growing the grand list. But I wouldn't discount the benefit of having that additional capacity, because when you think about the types of businesses that you have in Wolcott. You know, a lot of them are small home-based businesses. And the ability to so two things, the ability for a small home-based business to move, out of the home office and garage into a small space is huge. And even if it's a very small thing. Right now, if you're anyone on a grandfathered system is grandfathered at that capacity. They cannot increase it by 1 gallon per day. And I think about some of the lots in here and some of the buildings, like the Bucks buildings, being able to even increase that complex's design flow by, a few hundred gallons per day could really change the mix of uses. The other thing is with the buyouts, when you buy out and demolish a building on a grandfathered septic system, you lose all of that capacity. With the public system, if you do these buyouts, that capacity just goes back into the pool, unallocated pool, and can go to somewhere else in the village.
Right, I mean, rough calculation, if we had the 6 buyouts within, I don't know if they're all within the village center, we'd have an additional 1,500 gallons a day capacity.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last thing is what Peter talked about, the metering thing. You have, after several years, you'll be able to go back and say, we're not actually using all of this, so we can use it for new things. So even with the, that, number that sounds small, I think it provides a lot of opportunity for this village in the long term. Adding retreatment, certainly when you get the final cost estimate, you could think about that. We'll have to work closely with JB and Stone, on the additional O&M cost too, because that does add some additional OM cost. But I think.
Yeah, thanks for adding that point, because I was thinking the same thing. It kind of complicates that in terms of having quite a few more bells and whistles that need to be looked at.
Yeah. But doing the permitting for it means if we do get to the end, and costs are low and you've been able to sharpen your pencils on the O&M, there wouldn't be anything that would preclude it, since we're doing the permitting. But it would be some additional work and additional cost.
So Linda, I think we had 7 buyouts, but I think one was in North Wolcott. Is one, or all 6 in the village within our designated service area?
They're all along this street
Hmm.
and one across, which is not
Yeah.
in the designated area.
No, so the one in North Wolcott, that's separate.
Yeah,
That's not part of this. There was a 7?
yeah, but I just got another one for right in the village next to the town hall.
Well,
The yellow house.
So the plus and the negative is we would essentially lose that parcel to develop the village, but we would gain the gallons per day.
Yeah, they've run out of money, so 50-50 right now. 3 are definite.
yeah.
Okay.
3 are definite on this road.
I don't want to, I know I initiated the diversion from the agenda, but we're going to get into the gallons per day when we talk about the ordinance. So I think we can continue this, but maybe we should jump back and to review and approve the minutes and stick with our agenda. So do I have a motion to approve last meeting's minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve March 12th meeting minutes.
I'll second that. It's Bruce.
Any discussion? All in favor?
I,
Opposed? I guess we have adopted the minutes. All right, So our next discussion is the wastewater service structure, and I know JB and Seth and Tori have been working on that and are going to share a document for us. And I just wanted to add that Forrest also had a few other documents. He couldn't be here tonight. And Tori and I just had a quick discussion this afternoon that maybe we'll give Forrest an opportunity to share those other documents at our next meeting. This will be I think we'll have a couple of meetings to discuss this topic at the very least. And with that, so JB or Tori, one of you folks want to share?
Bradley, JB will need to share screen for this one.
Do we need, Bradley, can you grant permission?
Yeah, I think anybody can in the meeting.
Then I just gotta find it and poke all the buttons. Can we see that? It says Town of Wolcott proposed wastewater ordinance policy direction.
We can not see it here.
Okay. Let's try that again. Visible?
Yes.
Okay,
No.
exciting. No?
No,
I guess you folks could see it on Zoom, but we can't see it in the room for some reason.
Right, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, so.
It should be in the packet as well.
Okay, I'm trying again. It says participants can see your screen.
Yeah, it may be on the monitor on the computer and is not being dragged over.
There you go. Okay, so it's an issue there, not me.
Right.
Okay.
But like you said, if they have it in the packet, because we at home can see it.
Okay.
Are we talking about we're talking about the table, right, JB, in our handout?
Not
And-
the table. There was a table that Seth had sent. This was,
Not the ordinance. We're talking about the bottom line and the Wolcott wastewater fee structure table.
which did you, I'm sorry, it was my understanding you wanted to discuss the ordinance. Do you want to go to the fee structure? We can do that.
Which one does it make sense? We had the fee structure first on the agenda, but it does.
We'll do the fee
if one of
structure.
them- If one of them makes better
No,
sense
that's
first.
fine. That's fine. We can go to the fee structure. Stand by. Okay. We're just gonna poke some more little things and hope that Bill Gates doesn't rebel. Stand by. Vermont will get rates. Here we go. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna go to. Okay, I hope very much we're all looking at the same thing. So I am looking at, and did we get the table up on the monitor now?
So that one, sorry, we didn't get in the handout, but we see it on the screen. See it on the screen now.
That one I didn't have to print, so this is just digital at this point.
Okay,
Yes, that-
we're getting closer to see.
Okay, well, let's talk about, I'm sorry, I had done on the 12th, and Linda, this is what you and I reviewed.
Folks want to sit near a mic.
Okay. So looking overall at, just generally, where are we in terms of tax impact? Remember, please, there are a million different ways you can there are a lot of different ways you can allocate, the cost of this system among and between your ratepayers and the town, which of course goes on the tax roll. So this over here, D that I'm highlighting, that's where we put how much do we think the bond is going to be. That is your biggest sort of controller for how much any of this is going to cost, of course, because it's the capital cost and then the bond repayment. We are looking at 230, $500,000 in debt repayment. If we're at $500,000, it's $22,000 a year in repayment. And then we're looking at, our operation and maintenance anywhere from $42,000 to $52,000 per year. This had 42,000. I think Seth, the table that I got from you yesterday was like 52,000. Is he nodding or is he making faces at me?
Sorry, I get to
I'm teasing you because I can.
He's sticking
Okay.
his tongue out.
Excellent. All right, so let's use that. So if it's 52,000 a year, you've got what I've illustrated here, and I've included a small reserve fund. What I've illustrated here is your sort of basic option of we get a cost. The way big wastewater systems do this is you figure out your cost of service, and that's capital and O&M, and a reserve fund. You divide it up by the number of gallons, and then you charge people based on how many gallons per day they're using. Now, we're assuming on flows by user that the town, the municipal total, is somewhere around 1,015 gallons. And I'm basing this on, and this is Pete, where we, again, we've got a lot of moving parts. A system is in the neighborhood of 15,000 gallons per day. This can be modified. All of this can be modified. If you put the full cost of a $500,000 bond and 52,000 a year in O&M, if you just take it by gallons and you put the full cost on users so that you're only paying based on your allocated capacity in the system, and we don't make any adjustments of the town taking on an extra share, you are looking at a single family cost of about $100 a month. And we know that that's too much. And you are not legally obligated to do this any one particular way. State statute gives you broad authority to set your own rates. So that's kind of your worst possible case for your users, especially residential, is to just divide it up by gallons and charge them that. Now,
So,
what does that?
JB
Yes.
JB, so that, just so I'm hearing this correctly, that is the service area, capital, customers paying for the capital and for the O&M.
Absolutely, with no subsidy and no adjustment.
It-
The only
um,
thing, right, the only thing the town pays in this rate option 1 is the user rate for its connected structures. Right, and I know we don't want to do this, but I think it's helpful to see sort of what the order of magnitude is at both ends.
JB, can I just ask one favor? And Seth, Tori could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the gap that what we're going to bond for right now, the estimate is about 760,000. Is that correct? If we don't get any additional grant funding, which we won't before the vote.
Based on the current cost estimate we have in the PER, yes.
Okay,
I think the question that's underlying this is the history.
okay.
And then we have that discussion about how to manage the fact that there's almost multi-million-dollar potential outstanding grant funds that you won't know about before. The bond vote and how to manage that.
And that would, in this scenario, JB, if you went up to 760, we're at 120.
Yeah, again, and this is if you do nothing, but the cost of the town in this scenario is a whopping $5,982 a year. That's putting all the burden on your users. And the town's just paying for its connected share, which is fine if you're South Burlington, less fine in Woolkit. So then we can look at some other options. Option 2 is what happens if you set and we can really think about this. If you want to set a maximum cost per month or a fixed cost per month for single family, here I've done $30. And you don't put any of the rest of this on the tax rate, then you got, okay, $30 a month is for single family. That's great. The cost to your commercial users goes way up. And you roughly double the impact to taxpayers. Now, it's still pretty minimal. You're still looking at $15 a year for $200,000 of assessed value, or about $7 per $100,000 assessed value. Again.
How much did you say per year for 200,000?
Okay, so
Dollar
down
house?
at the bottom, Linda, this is what we went over that I still want to make triple check with Belinda.
She said she emailed you today.
She sent me the rate, which
Yeah.
she had already sent me, but didn't, and I was not able to give her a call today. I'm pretty sure this is correct, but because the town would only be paying about $12,000 in this scenario. And if depending on the tax rate, $10 a year per 100,000. You know, if a penny on your tax rate raises 17,000,
16, you can say.
16,000, that's about right.
So 15 to $22 a month for 200 to
That's
300,000
per year.
per year. I'm just thinking $200,000 to $300,000 assessed home. So $20, let's just say, yeah,
Small.
okay. And that's again, capital and O&M.
This is the whole, this is, okay, we're not putting anything on the tax rate except what it costs the town to be connected to the system. Let's go right, and I'm gonna split the window here. Okay. Now, if the town, and this is select board and voter decision, rate option 3, if the town paid the debt repayment, which in this scenario is about, is almost $34,000. If we're up at 780,000, we're about $34,000. That's 2 cents on the tax rate. Okay, so that's a little bit more of a hit. Somebody with $30,000 is going to pay $70 a year in additional property tax. That would, without an adjustment, that would put your single family cost still not entirely great at $74 a month. And Bucks Furniture would be paying about $473. Rate option 4 is if the town pays the debt repayment and then pays its fees, its connected fees, then we're up at the town's responsibility being about, closer to 42,000. And then we're looking at somewhere between, call it $26 to $77 if you're at 100 to 300,000. So if you have $300,000 house, $77 a year would be added to your property tax to pay for the wastewater system. $6 a month.
So JB, question, so the reserve fund, the $3,000 a year, is that intended to rebuild the system?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Repairs problem, right?
Okay, that's just, okay, a little cushion.
Repairs,
The reserve.
cushion, a pump gets funky, a pipe breaks, a little bit of reserve. Or God forbid, you have to get, you have to go after somebody for back payment and you have to get legal involved. It's just to give you, and you can, this is probably going way too rabbit hole. You can make your own rules about how that reserve fund is used. but it's never a bad idea to build up, say, 30, 40 grand into a fund so that you have it for significant repairs. If there's a step tank that has to come out, mostly it's pumps, chunks of line. Also wouldn't hurt building confidence with your school board, with your voters about the ability to repair if something gets funky at the school.
One number that looks pretty staggering that we, is the cost per month for Bucks at 1,575 gallons per day at $1,000 a month.
Right.
That seems pretty
Okay.
staggering.
That is if, and again, there are lots and lots and lots of iterations in here. If the residential cost, it's this scenario, this option 2 and option 4 are trying to balance off how much do the taxpayers take on, how much, and then and then if we really artificially lower the cost for our single family residential, what happens to our commercial ratepayers? So say we did even $35 a month. Drops the cost $2 a little bit.
Right.
So can I just ask a little question?
Yeah.
So what about the Wolcott store?
Great question. So the Wolcott store, and Peter, correct me if any of this is. They're only they're 400 gallons, call it 400 gallons a day. So the store would be L39. Let's go. Okay, so the store would be in this case times, what did I just say? 400.
400.
Bloop, 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 bloop. They'd be about 245 a month.
Okay.
And
In scenario.
is Bucks at 1,500 gallons a day now, or are we talking about future use?
So what I have here is that their permit is 1,557 gallons per day. Now, I don't know, that's an Amy question, what they're using, but that is their permitted capacity today. Now, how much do they want? That's a different question. It seemed high to me as a permitted
Yeah,
capacity.
it does seem high.
Seems
That
fine to
doesn't-
me.
That doesn't feel right to me, but I'll check it for the next meeting.
Okay. It's, it would be good to get that one because it's the largest single nut of the commercial and institutional. So,
Hmm.
you know, we should figure that one out. Also, I don't have in here, I'm basing all of this off existing flows. I'm not like waiting on the Nazarene Church to build its housing or whatever else. I'm doing all of this off existing.
And the cafe restaurant, that's 300 gallons a day?
40.
Here,
Is that it for a hypothetical? Well, restaurant, cafe, if we want to build
Right.
something at the school, the old school,
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, that would be,
that's 300 gallons a day.
yep.
So,
Now,
and
again, I'm not going to, I am purely going off of current flows. But yeah, we have a placeholder in here for 900 for tasting room / cafe. Or value-added processing, cafe, restaurant. But I'm just going off of what's current.
I'm just thinking, I'm
Current
just thinking,
likely to connect.
I'm just thinking as a cafe owner, restaurant owner at the old schoolhouse, say, would be comparable to what the general store would be paying. So approximately 400 gallons, which is, you said $250 a month.
No, they would
The
be
cafe
using
would be about,
more.
whoops. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think they'll be using more, Jim, when you think about that. Like the general store, people, I don't know.
I'll
I
just
think the
chime in
restaurant
that,
would-
cafes with seats is gonna, I haven't looked at this table in a while, so
Okay,
we can look at that again, and I can, maybe get back to everyone on a few of the different particular properties, but, cafes and restaurants with seats are significantly higher in terms of flows than, say, a deli at a gas station. So
Yeah.
they probably
Yeah.
aren't one and one.
thank you, Peter.
Yeah, the deli's like 100 gallons per day.
Yeah.
When you get in the cafe, we're looking at 40 seats at 100 gallons each. It could be a lot.
If
Yeah.
the store was sold and they wanted to put a few seats in there.
Mhm.
That we see sometimes at the general store cafe. And they would be maybe a small scale restaurant cafe, maybe only 15, 20 seats or something.
Yeah, and pinging the point about just putting in a few seats that we talked about earlier of even limited available capacity in the system, creating flexibility. A small cafe with a deli that, has 4 seats and maybe wants 9. And Peter, if you think I'm referring to what I'm referring to, I am. On a grandfathered system, may not be able to do that legally, but with even a system with 1,000 gallons extra capacity suddenly gets an ability to add or subtract seats as, or activities as the market allows.
Yep.
And for the rate structure, what you're going to see here is that getting those additional seats also helps make the system more affordable for everyone. I hope I didn't jump ahead of you, JB, with that, but you get an incentive as a community to encourage development in your village. And the first years might be the roughest while you're filling them out. So that is something to be prepared for when you're looking at these numbers.
To me, it seems like the fixed number maybe, I think there's some flexibility when we said $30 a month. I think we could go up to 35, maybe even 40 a month. But I don't know what that cap is, but to me, once you get over $40 a month, it starts to get expensive for the single home residential costs, but also maybe using the general store more as how much can they pay per month
Yep.
as another fixed variable. I think because that Bucks number seemed, as Peter was saying, that seems high. But
A question about that Bucks number, is that the current use? Current use is practically zero.
Well, we don't
yes.
know their use. That's what their permitted capacity is.
Okay, so they could expand and use up to 1,500 gallons with the current capacity.
Well, that's the capacity of their current septic system.
Right. No, I understand.
So what we would need to know from them is how much they wanted to purchase in this new system.
Yeah, I'm just saying that right now, if they did not upgrade that whole set of buildings with more sewerage, they would be using practically zero. They are not using any capacity to speak of right now.
Right.
300, 500 gallons a day, maybe.
Okay. It may be, that's probably the wrong example. I went with that because it's the biggest chunk. And again, I'm working off the table and I don't know. If we went with the store, let's take this out of hypothetical and just go Wolcott Village store here with what we currently know. Okay. I can't, okay, sorry, window. Okay. The village store is. Let's give them a number. If we feel good about it. Peter, to the best of your knowledge, right now, are they at about 393 gallons per day? Would you guess?
Yeah, that seems reasonable. Adding
Okay,
those
so that's
numbers
what
up
we
there.
think is going on here, going on there today. So if they did nothing else and just connected with what they have today, let's put them in here. Okay, so they would be rate option 1 at 193.
And Beth, does that include their apartments or is it solely the store?
That's one apartment, which is the information I have.
Okay,
And for clarification, the single family home is a 3-bedroom?
Yes,
Yeah.
and this gets tricky. The way we've conventionally, I just want to update this store thing before I totally lose my train of thought. Okay, so now you can see this is a more apples to apples comparison.
Where's the store on that?
1 second, please. Okay. All right, so here's the store. All right. So the store, if the town takes over, if the town paid the debt and its own fees, the store would be about 120 a month. If you fix that residential rate at $35 and the town pays the bond, then the store is looking at $240 a month. Rate option 5 is where you set a fixed rate for both commercial and residential. Maybe it's $4.50 a gallon, and put more on the town tax rate. And again, the lower the cost you make, the lower the cost you want to create for the users, the higher the burden on your taxpayers as a whole. And we can illustrate that until our heads explode.
right.
And JB, just for fun, can you change the 35 to 40?
Sure. Yeah, this is the fun part. Once you get the model build, all kind, you can just play with it forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, at $40 a month. If we look at this rate option 4 here. Come on, Excel. Somebody be nice to me today. What happened here?
But the assessment, JB, is $75 or $87 per year, right? To the
That's per
taxpayer?
year.
Yeah, okay, I just,
What happened here?
that to me is what's going to be the zinger of this whole thing.
Yeah.
The money.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, it's. Yeah, this would be $75 a year
Yeah,
on someone who's got a $300,000 assessment. Now it's, $6 a month. Do you buy, $6 worth of chicken fingers at the store and want them to have good wastewater? But it's a number that people will see. What do you mean you want me to pay for their septic system?
that's what I'm saying, cause I'm a
Yeah.
taxpayer and I'm in
Yep.
that 300,000 range. So
Yep.
this is why I'm asking the questions.
Okay,
Just like, yes, I can afford to pay that. I don't have I could easily sell it, but I'm thinking about the rest of our community and my neighbors here and whether they would be. What kind of questions they're gonna be thrown at me about why would I wanna pay that?
right.
Yep,
Well,
So the other
Yeah.
thing you can do is assign, and Seth has recommended one option, which is for the town to pay something like half of the O&M, and maybe there was, to pay a portion of the operation and maintenance to write down the user fees without adding too much to the user rate. The other thing you can do, just to make it more complicated, and this is really when I feel like the angel of death or at least confusion. It would be entirely possible to write your bond issue contingent upon the town receiving. Your bond issue is gonna be a fairly, is gonna be a limited amount. You could say, shall the town bond up to X 100,000? Contingent upon receiving blank amount in grants and establishment of a tax impact of no more than a certain amount.
I don't know that I'm comfortable with that myself. I feel like I want this to happen. I want this to happen for the village of Woken. I mean, this is a change of our whole community. I mean, after living here for, I've lived here a long time. And I really do feel like I think we need to think about these, and I really appreciate these different rate structures here. But I do feel like I don't want too many contingencies. If we don't get this, or if we don't get this, I don't like that. I want this a yes vote, very clear, and we may have to borrow this money, but we are hoping, or we are like, I don't even like the word hoping, but you know what I'm saying? I don't want this, that people say no or yes, just on the contingency that we're gonna get another grant for $400,000.
Okay.
Because if that's, that balance doesn't feel good to me.
Tell me where you all think a sweet spot would be for the impact on the tax rate. How much do you think people would say, yeah, that would work for me?
You're talking about town overall, not the village
Correct.
service area.
I'm not talking service area, I'm talking tax rate.
I like option 5 myself, but
Well, I would say to Tricia's question, I don't think we have any idea what people would accept. There are people in this town that would accept much, much larger than other people would accept. And so it comes down to what are the statistics of who's gonna vote, how are they gonna vote?
And I think you're much more option 3, Jim. And that's just my own opinion. I mean, we live on different hills in the community, but
that $74 is too high, I think. That's what scares me in option 3.
okay, so then maybe we go Woolkit Stores goes up a little higher. And where's the buck rate in there? I mean, the Woolkit Store, I think should go. I agree with you there. 74 is too high. 35 or 40, I'm okay with the resident paying. So I think this is maybe just playing with numbers a little bit more.
Yeah.
Even that 70 rate 4, I think we could make that happen.
Is the 228 seems high for the store. That seems like a lot.
I
don't
would
think it
push
does.
back a little bit, Jim, in that the exposure that they have, and first of all, the exposure that they have to cost, the economic flexibility that they get from having a proper wastewater system, and that compared to a lot of their other utility bills is peanuts.
It is peanuts.
$1,000.
228, I
But
think.
Is it Woken Village Store, that means the restaurant and the 7 apartments?
How many
Yeah.
apartments?
They have 7 apartments in there.
Okay, Pete, we got issues with this table.
Yeah,
Right.
we haven't worked together on.
I
what
think
they
we're
would do.
talking. There's only one apartment there, but so yeah. I was just
But I don't
thinking
know, I
about,
think we're talking theoretically anyway. I don't know that anything needs
No,
to be.
this is supposed to be current flows. Supposed to be.
So you do have.
Oh, so they're more
a
of
village store
1,000.
That's why I
Let's-
was asking, is this the apartments? Like I
Okay,
was
so
like,
that's all their apartments. This is with all of their apartments.
It is
So-
with all their apartments, okay.
Okay, so with all the apartments, and you would expect that they would pass along. So now we're at somewhere between 300 and 600 a month. Now you would expect with 7 apartments. Maybe $20 a month times 7, maybe 140, 150 bucks gets passed along in rent or utilities.
At least.
Yep,
They're section A. Just to
so
let you
it's gonna
know.
be a little bit limited, but maybe, but it is a utility bill.
Yeah.
15, 20 bucks a month times 7. So there's a piece of it. Peter and I went through dealing with a filling system for a property in Waitsfield where they were paying 350 bucks a week to have the systems pumped. It was lots of fun. From a cost exposure standpoint, there's still, you know,
Yeah.
250 to 300 a month is a realistic ask to support a commercial property for wastewater.
It is, and if you look at other village and rates, I mean, I hear from what people pay in Morristown. That's not a high rate at all.
That's $3,000 a year though, right?
Well, I'd say the other issue is that the store, the Wolcott store does not represent the commercial tax-paying business of the future. There will be businesses in this town that will represent a bigger ability to pay and higher usage, not higher storage usage, but higher capital usage than the village.
JB, just for fun, can we add that 40-seat cafe to this to see what they would pay in these scenarios?
You bet.
And so we're just coming off the cuff, everyone. And I think maybe this is what Peter was trying to say, is we are just picking things off the top of our head on this thing. Like, who's to say that the Wolcott store isn't making that kind of cash flow and shouldn't be paying that kind of bill? I mean, I don't know that. I know when I go by, there's always vehicles at the Wolcott store. Do I go to it? No, I don't, but I don't go that way that often. But I think we're sort of, I don't know. I feel like we're
They're
still
changing, April 15th, new owners for the store.
Really? So the same one that fell.
They're
through
just
last time?
leasing, no, a couple from New Hampshire.
Are
So
they
they're
split?
going to lease the store.
There you
they're
go.
Are
leasing it for
buying-
Fred.
They're buying the business. They're buying the business. But they're
Not
not
the
buying
building.
the building.
That's too bad.
Well, yeah, I think it's
Are they looking for more storage capacity at the store? Do we know?
they don't talk to us.
While JB is working those numbers,
Well,
can I just ask, I don't want to put you on the spot. Allison and Dom, you're on Zoom, you're village residents. If you care to partake in this discussion, I just want to see how that would hit you as a village resident. We're talking $30 or $40 a month.
I'd also, before even answering that, want to know what kind of added electric cost I would be looking at to maintain that pump system, because that factors in for me as well.
And also,
Is there anything on those numbers?
that's a good Peter question, but, and also for clarification too. We haven't discussed this yet, but there's the service area charge rate. And then
My tax burden.
And then
on
your
top.
tax, and then your tax rate on top of that, right, JB?
So-
That,
Right
Yes.
now, for me, wastewater isn't my ideal solution for the future. So I have other things too that compete with this, but yeah, so all of those fees, I have a good system that we maintain, and I maintain my leach field, and it helps me grow the flowers that I grow, and I have control and maintain it, and we're not in a flood system. And adding up those kinds of fees, just doing like quick calculations, I can replace my system when it fails for what I would have paid for annual cost. So,
So if you have a fully complying system outside of, in your properties outside the floodplain,
yes. And it was a newer system that was put in, and I have a yard that was, has a lot of sand and good.
okay,
So, we have a special little piece of property that's up and different from most of the village. So I want to see wastewater. For me, I'm not sure that it's what I want for my particular property's future.
okay, because
Might be the example of the opt-out, depending on if you have.
And we might want to get the details from
Yeah.
Dom and Allison from their system to see, well, we're going to discuss opt-out option
right,
in our next discussion on the agenda, Allison and
Right.
Dom.
because in a lot of cases, if you have sand and you're out of the floodplain, that is all great. What we're seeing for replacement systems for a lot of people who don't have great sites is payments in the neighborhood, especially right now for a mound system. If you do a 10-year loan, you can be up at $380 a month. If you have a 15-year loan, you might be at $304, but we're seeing people at, $300 a month for residential loans, $30,000, and not, it's nowhere near, you would have to pay into these systems $500 a year plus $20 of tax, $520 a year. It would take you 60 years to buy a $30,000 system. So the cost for challenging or small sites, this is significantly less.
Allison and Dom, if you hold that thought on your specific system, and what we want to, we're going to discuss, we have an opt-out option in the ordinance that we're working on for newer systems that are properly cited and properly working. So if you can hold that thought, I appreciate the input there. But I think JB, this is really important that we represent the cost to the village resident here, both the service fee and like we have to add those two numbers up for that.
The second is the tax amount.
So the assessed amount, assessed value per
So
year.
if the house is 300,000. And this is their monthly payment. So rate option 2, you're looking at $500 a year. That's taxes and I'm going to make a note, rate and tax for.
And for the commercial as well. The assessed value of the commercial.
I have no idea what that is.
Right. But I mean, for the businesses, they pay the service fee plus the additional assessment. Yes.
Say the store is, I don't know, you want to illustrate it at 500,000. I know my Excel approach is sometimes slow for some people. Okay, this is if you really stick it to your commercial property owners. Let's move over to.
That's high, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think your commercial property owners would probably not love that. But I do think it's important to put the context in there of what happens to people who would otherwise have to do a mound or some kind of other system with a significant variance. it's not gonna be any fun financially. Okay, so there's your
The
option
store, the
3
store, okay.
for, 7,500 a year, 5,000 a year. I think it's clear that asking village residents for 1,000 a year, 960, 1,000 is gonna be a big lift. But what about 500? Because again, that's like 2 months home equity payment on a new mound system. or less.
Okay.
And you say, well, what if I never have to replace it? Okay, it's a gamble.
Curious what is that based on the existing commercial lots and their capacities?
Okay, again, I have based this on what I have understood to be the current flows of properties likely to connect, which is about 8,500 gallons of flow from single family, 4,600 from commercial, about 1,000 of existing municipal uses, and 900, it's really just the Methodist Church for current flows. I was just being conservative and assuming nothing changes. I'm going based on that. The one we don't know that would affect this is Bucks. Because if they were only going to connect at like 300 gallons a day, then you have fewer gallons of capacity, the rates go up.
Right. No, yeah, thanks. And the Nazarene Church, now uses zero, of course.
Right.
But yeah, sure.
JB, did you have a chance to add the cafe scenario?
Okay, the thing with the cafe is it's a whole lot of flow, and these numbers aren't gonna be right, because then you're adding a lot of gallons and you're dividing everybody by a bigger, you have a bigger denominator. So I would need to make a new sheet to be remotely accurate.
And your option 2.5 that you were
I
working on?
scrapped because it seemed like we were,
Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make, so I'm just, maybe if we could just pause for a moment here, and I just want to kind of get a sense of the room here on the different options, if what folks are thinking about the different options, and anybody want to?
Can we get a copy of the
Jump in?
spreadsheet?
yeah, I'm so sorry. I really thought we had this. I do still want to, Linda, absolutely 100% verify with Belinda that I've got the calculations on the amount on assessed value 100% correct.
No, at some point. It doesn't have to be right away. But
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, it's really
Back in
getting that.
1998, some information got out in Waitsfield that wasn't correct, and I'm still scarred 30 years later. Stop laughing, Peter Lazorchak.
It's not funny.
Any thoughts in the room or on Zoom on this different options?
Well, it's kind of hard because you can't see the whole thing, but I'd like to know, I'd like to go back and see what the town's paying in these options.
It'd be nice to have a simpler model that only showed at least those aspects of the town and municipalities or the.
Okay, well,
users and so
here-
on.
Okay, this is what the town is paying, is this green line. It's twice, total cost allocated to grand list of town cost for wastewater. That's in bright green.
I meant the part where the town will pay the bond road and there's part of the
It's
fees,
Here.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Where's that? Where's that?
Right on the top.
It's in row 30, it's this row. What is the town paying? This is the language and this is the amount.
Yeah, I think we can work with JB after this meeting to, maybe put that into a summary for you, Linda. So that, when you're looking at each option, you can have that cheat sheet of exactly what's.
Right, and there are lots of other options. I'm feeling like we need to land somewhere in the middle. in terms of tax rate impact and I also, Peter, I think now would be a good time to really look at the user, the consumption and make sure that it's accurate. This was done, this is off the PER table. That was before the buyouts. So, and between the buyouts and bucks, I'm a little nervous we might have a smaller denominator than 15,000.
Which the good news,
So-
back to some of the other questions, is that puts more potential capacity for future growth, which sounds like some
Lots,
folks
yes.
were concerned that that might be low.
JB, could you scroll down so we can see the assessed impact as well? Yeah, thank you. And option 3 again? What was option 3?
Okay. Option 3 is the town is paying the bonded debt repayment. And again, you could
And
pay
its fees, okay, that's
and
kind
your
of,
own fees. I'm assuming throughout, you pay your own sewer bill. Ask me about a community in Arizona where they're not paying their own sewer bill.
I mean, my overall, my gut is that this 74 is too high. And the 600 might be high for the store. And the medium, the happy medium there for me is option 5. I realize that's more on the assessed.
Yeah, but that's
Per year.
$50,000 for the town. That, to me, that's too much. Because there's other things besides wastewater in town that are pressing the town budgets. That just seems like an awful lot of money, 50,000.
And which of these options
5.
looks more appealing for you? For the,
Well, it's really hard for me to look at.
yeah,
I can't, I don't have enough
Yeah,
stuff to look at them and make a decision, but
we should get folks a cheat sheet. Has some of those key numbers. Linda, in terms of options is up here aside, like total annual cost for the town, what do you feel comfortable with? Is there 50 sounds too much? Is there a range that is a comfortable spot or?
more like 30, 35 or something.
That's about here, right? Option 3.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, that's where we start to get, if the comfort level for the town is only 35,000, unless we can really get the bond payment down, that's gonna be tough.
So, well, so circling back to where we started this conversation. What if we got 100% of the capital? And how would these numbers change?
Watch the magic happen.
Okay, okay.
If you get 100% of the capital, you can set it at 35. You can set it at 35
I
or
think those,
$40 a month.
do they
the
change?
town- The town, worst case, I mean, look what you're asking for. You get 100% of the capital, you're asking people. Even in like rate option 5 for $28 a year.
That's my happy place.
Bingo.
Option 5 with, but we have to get all the grants for that. And with that, Linda, how would that be? I mean, in that case, we wouldn't really have that.
Right. The town would be paying 15, 16,000 a year for wastewater costs. That's about a penny on the ground, in the tax rate. That gives you a little more room to breathe, you know, we're trying to renovate the schoolhouse and.
I mean, you know, your
Something
consultant
like
team's
this.
opinion is we would do just about anything to get you way the heck down. I mean, even if you had to pay a little bit of capital,
Yeah.
say DEC says you're gonna buy it for $100,000, you're still in like 20 to 35 bucks a year per house, far more saleable. You know, $3 a month for the vitality of the village. That feels a lot better. Yeah, this one feels,
And that one, so in that option 5 with no capital or minimal capital,
minimal capital.
so the taxpayers are gonna. That they're actually, so that cost, the assessed value cost is for the 100,000
Mhm.
and so the O and M cost would only be the town properties O and M cost in that scenario?
Basically, rate option 5 is you fix the rates that you're charging. You write your rate schedule as a select board or board of sewer commissioners to say single family residential is 35 bucks. Presumably under that, we'd do something for apartments, you know, 1 and 2 bedroom. Commercial users pay, in this illustration, $4.50 per gallon. And then the town pays the rest of the bill. So you don't worry too much about pieces of the pie. You set the rates for people. They're still very relevant to your cost of service. And then you know, the town basically pays the remaining share.
And I'm just curious, what does the $3.50 a gallon commercial equate to the $30 a month residential?
I actually have this in here.
If that's at
So-
245 gallons per
Basically,
day.
your system cost. Divided by. Your overall system cost of service would be. Very helpful. $3.94. So you'd be, actually, so you'd probably want to do $4 a gallon here. So basically you're writing down your single family would be paying. Your single family, you're basically giving a $50 a month subsidy to your single family here. They would be paying $81. But you set theirs artificially low. And then in this illustration, commercial are paying basically the cost of service, and the town is subsidizing the residential ratepayers.
JB, I'm curious, is the $4 a gallon typical? What would the price be somewhere else in some other community for
Oh,
a commercial
gosh.
rate?
Bruce, it is so all over the place. The 695, 750, I mean, it really depends. It really depends. You know, some places charge a fairly, it depends if it's block rate pricing. I can tell you the base single family charge, City and County of Honolulu right now is $76 a month. And commercial is weird. We have seen, I'm trying to think of some others. I can let you know in 2 weeks once we have our new rate numbers in for Hawaii. But
That's okay.
I do see, you know, single family anywhere from, geez, Seattle's over 100 a month. It kind of depends on what's been going on in that system.
Yeah, that's
And how
okay.
much of a commercial base you even have. $7 a month per gallon per month, or a $7 rate would not be unusual,
Okay, thanks.
but it's all over the place.
I just want to do a time check. 6:25, I just want to leave some time to discuss the ordinance. What, just if we have any thoughts on the different options and how we proceed here, this is gonna carry over into our next meeting, and I think all of us want to see, be able to look into this in more detail on our own. I'm getting a sense, reading the room here. And we may have some follow-up discussion on this, and there may be a option 5.5 or a 4.5. There might be other options as well that we can think about. But there's lots of options, as I appreciate JB putting this together, and this is very, very eye-opening, and obviously I wish we knew about these grants, these other grants before our bond vote, and because option 5 without the capital cost would be pretty sweet.
Is there anything built in there for, capital replacement? Or is that gonna fall on the town too?
I mean, we have a little bit of a reserve fund here.
3,000?
I would say that's probably on the low end. Knowing what stuff costs to fix stuff. Like
Right.
some pumps is like, one pump you wanna get to $1,000. So 10 grand, if you're digging up over there. I bet the bill you get's about 2 to 3 grand per leak. So 10 grand's probably more healthier to get into.
Per year.
You are prohibited by Vermont law from setting aside more than 15% of your annual cost of service in a reserve fund. That was done to prevent boards of sewer commissioners from artificially increasing prices to create large cash reserves with which they did not necessarily great things, and to ensure that utilities don't run huge cash balances on the backs of their ratepayers. So the most you could probably do here is 8 grand a year, 8 or 9, but that is totally up to you. You do not, in this case, this is not a scenario in these very small community systems that are heavily heavily subsidized, where we try to put away a 30, 40-year replacement cost. It will blow up your rates. Again, I know Peter has made this case very eloquently. We are seeing things like the Warren Village system up at Brooks Field and such really have, I mean, not necessarily the pumps, they'll go at some point, but the septic field, the collection systems are really hanging in there over 30 years later. And so between the state limitation and the durability of these new small community systems, if you want to do 8 grand, great, especially if there's no capital cost, then you've got more room to do that. But we don't do full replacement value in here.
I'm thinking like, you're gonna want the 8 grand, cause another problem I can foresee. If you get the dissolved greases coming in, you may have to jet a line out or something. And that cost is not cheap. Like if you have dissolved greases that do get past the tank. That will clog that line. You gotta get the jetter truck to come do it. You're talking a $5,000-6,000 bill for one plug, if you're not careful. Just to jet out one line once, if you get a lot of grease out. So you probably want to be there.
I'd say you only buy insurance if you can't afford to do it. So let it go. You raise the money when it happens, if it's a big problem.
The thing
I wouldn't insure it ahead of time by having a huge reserve and running a risk of not being voted in.
Yeah, we're kind of heading in I think, discussion about like the discharge of the system and kind of the ordinance direction that I think is really important. But I do know Tricia was, I think, trying to say something about the rate structure in general. So just want to make sure you're not cut off, Tricia.
No, I was just gonna say, like Morrisville Water and Light was $9.12. I mean, I think this is what people were looking for, like apples to apples around our community.
Yep.
And I just wanted people to know that's where it was. The
That's,
other thought is about the reserves. I would increase the reserves a little. I wouldn't bring it up to 7,000, but maybe thinking 4 or 5,000, in my own opinion, just thinking about repairs and, like you've said right along, hopefully for the next, at least 10 years, you're not even gonna have to make much of even minor repairs. And then, at the 30-year mark, but so you're gonna take this money and keep putting it into reserves, so hopefully you are gonna have a chunk when you do have to do, certain sections to repair. But no, that's just my thought about that one.
What I first see is I know is that pump stations. Does it 30 years is great sounding? We have two right now. We gotta have someone come pull. And I bet the bill for each one's $1,000. And hopefully it's not a piece of grease from the tank that got in and plugged it and destroyed it. We have two of them right now. We have someone coming to borrow. And because we don't have people to do it, we gotta have someone with a specialized truck come to pull it. And take it apart. And if you get a piece of grease that breaks it or burns out that pump. Depending what comes in the tank. You could look at a lot more than that. And the lines. It's easy for any of those lines to get plugged. And you could easily spend 10 grand like nothing. Jetting lines. Cause they plug. Or you get a flood like other places. You have a sewer line that breaks. It is full of rocks and a 4-inch pipe for 200 feet, and you gotta have someone come and clear that. So you wanna make sure you have that. So in the future, you don't have to increase those rates if you have something come up.
Peter, can you talk on this one a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, I was gonna chime in a little bit.
Thank you.
I agree with Alan that a lot of the maintenance costs, especially on older systems, is huge. But I think one thing to remember and we're kind of seeing this on the water commission I serve on, is that on the front end there, while you're still paying that debt service, there isn't as many costs. Yes, we have to have enough money to be buying new pumps here and there. But while you're still paying that debt service, there aren't as many costs. And then once that debt service is paid off, you can kind of maintain the fees and start building up that reserve a little bit. With that said, Julie Beth is right on that 15% law, which does kind of handicap boards who do want to be responsible and have a larger reserve fund. So that's tricky. And lastly, I'll say that the pumps at most of these properties, I can work to try to get some cost, but in general, they're not like the huge, high flow pumps that you might be talking about, and like for wastewater treatment plants and some of the stuff that you're working on, Alan. So I totally agree, Alan, with all your conservatism and the things that happen on these systems that you have to spend money on. So, we can kind of work to try to get that right balance.
So just being aware of the time here, any just last minute quick thoughts on the different options? More importantly, how does this committee want to proceed with the various rate options? We will obviously have to spill into our next meeting, and we need more time individually with this. And anything else that we need in order to come up with some decisions? It's not going to happen tonight, but any gut feelings on the options right now? Do we just want to have more time to think about it and hunt until our next meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe we should think about it, and I think it should be like someone should send comments, or we should send all comments to you, Jim, so with the next meeting, we're not going round and round about this again at this caliber. And this is really good. I've learned a lot through this, but I think everyone that should be their homework.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. And so after JB gets some verification on some of these numbers with Peter and Belinda, I think we can get an updated spreadsheet. I guess we're gonna have to go with the 760 capital number in looking at these options again. But then we can come up with individual questions and we'll compile those and bring those to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to see just the operations and maintenance broken down as if there was no bond, and then the $760,000 bond, so you get the idea of the range from zero bond to the upper end of your bond? That seemed to help you understand. You're probably not going to get as to absolute zero bond, but that did seem to help in the discussion understand what was the capital replacement or the capital cost and what was the operations maintenance cost.
Yeah, I think for our meeting, that when we have to talk about the numbers, our next public meeting roundtable, I think that'll be important to say, this is what worst case scenario, what we have to bond for and what this impact would be on your taxes. And best case scenario, no bonding or no capital. And then maybe something in between.
Yeah.
Seth, if I could have that even before our next meeting, I mean, if you have those figures pretty easily adaptable, I would like to think about that, because that's gonna make my comments to Jim a little cleaner.
Okay. We'll work with JB on trying to get some of that oil down.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so I guess we'll shift gears over to the ordinance unless someone has any other last minute thoughts on this.
I'm gonna, just to warn everyone, I have to jump out in about 10 minutes or so.
Okay, anything on the ordinance that you would like to be around for, Peter, that we can jump to before you have to leave?
I don't think so. Quite frankly, at this point in the game, my biggest concerns are decisions that somehow in one way or the other drive these rates that we're talking about.
And
So,
yeah, and the discussion about reserve, that's still in the ordinance, the 20% reserve and
I don't,
the dedicated 15%. There was also some language about a 15% dedicated fund for a replacement system, and we just had that discussion, and that sounds like it's not in the numbers, but I think that's in the ordinance.
Well, you can, it's gonna depend in part on your bonded debt. Ironically, the more you bond for, the more room you have to put away a larger reserve. But you can put any number your heart's desire in here. That's one I would leave as something you can illustrate.
And the 20% reserve that I think we.
15 is your maximum.
Springs up there.
What's that?
15% your maximum.
Anyways,
What's that?
most of them off on that hill anyways for that stuff.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Maybe someday.
Tori, were you gonna bring that up?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sections you'll have, you'll want on the block system, bro. That's real about that. That's all that shit.
Is that big enough? About bigger?
Bigger would be great. Thank you.
Ignoring this random box.
Yeah, Tori and I are mystified by the box. Okay,
This-
so go ahead, Tori.
No, you can go ahead. I just wanted to point out that this is the same executive summary the committee's worked off of for the past few meetings, just the clean copy that reflects all the policy decisions you guys have made to date.
You remember, Tori, where we left off on the ordinance, the Westford ordinance? Did we have some unfinished? Or did we get through the whole thing last time?
You got through the whole thing, with the exception of elements of it that would be impacted by the user fee structure that we just talked about. So you basically got through all of the policy items at the last meeting.
And JB, you had some highlighted sections and some notes here. I just want to make sure we have enough time to cover that while we have
Yeah.
you here
mean-
and Peter for a little bit.
We already have, because we basically, the highlighted sections are all the way down on page 6. And it's about the reserve fund. It's how much do you know, we're gonna have some fill in the blanks in an ordinance.
Oh, sorry, when I was saying reserve before, I didn't mean reserve fund, I meant capacity reserve.
Oh, that one. Okay, yeah, I mean,
So,
that's
yeah,
my understanding from talking with Tori was that you wanted to reserve enough for the schoolhouse to have a cafe and for the historical society. Yeah. That would be a reserve, and the rest of it would be available first come, first served.
and there was a percentage associated with that?
No, you don't. Westford had gone percentage wise, but nobody needs to pat on themselves after that other town with a W. If you have that designated purpose, you don't need to set aside another percentage. So
We agreed not to have a capacity reserve, right?
right. Just to have, but to retain, basically you're retaining an allocation for the town. So,
Can I ask something a little bit here? Not, sorry, I don't know too much about this whole ordinance thing. So we are saying that you're gonna reserve, if we can go back up, 20%, did I just see for, school?
that's just no. The schoolhouse would be, this is just an example from that
Okay.
other town's ordinance.
Okay,
But yours would be basically a blank, a number of gallons, and we need to figure that out, is reserved as town reserve capacity.
So
Right.
we have 2 architects working on this,
Yep.
engineers, and they've already determined it's 43 seats. Whatever the state is
Okay.
what's gonna fit in there on one side.
I think there's some confusion, JB, that Trisha's mentioning that I was also confused, but on page 3, number 2. So maybe that was just a carryover from Westford. But maybe if we can strike that language, if we're not going to use it.
This is the varying
This right here.
yeah, I mean, I don't,
Is it where you see where we're talking about? So it says town reserve capacity, 20%
Yeah.
of permitted capacity. Is that what you're talking about too, Tricia?
yeah,
Yeah,
I think what this note was about was the work that is going on with the schoolhouse, ensuring that there's enough capacity that's held for what has been discussed with that committee. But LCPC is staffing that committee, so we can do that.
so it should be far less than
Not be
20%.
anywhere near.
Okay, so maybe we can just flag that as that number is going to be a fraction of 20% number for a 40-seat restaurant. It shouldn't be anywhere.
And there might be more considering how much bucks or that lot wants to. There might be some for that can go to the reserve.
I would hope that we could do some. Well, that the whole Bucks property could be developed and have plenty of capacity, I mean.
This seems a little specific to me. Can we generalize it? And I mean, if we want to call out the schoolhouse, call it out at so many gallons per day. And then generalize the rest of it, but
I. Yeah,
I think that's what we're talking
I
about.
think that's what we're talking about, yeah.
But yeah, just whatever that allocation is for the schoolhouse
right, gallons per day.
is the set aside for the
And the
10.
20% would be, what is that? Just that disappears?
That's gonna disappear.
That should-
That was from Westford,
Okay.
ordinance language.
Let's see, that's.
Right.
Okay.
We want to start from the beginning, or do we want to jump into that, the gallons per day discussion that we were talking about?
Honestly, I think, we've gotten a lot of good direction on at least the rate evaluation process you want to go. And we're gonna have some fill in the blanks here. What I think is most important is for you just to make absolutely sure that these policies are what feel right.
I think it's important, given our discussion that we had with Allison and Dom on Zoom and their scenario for their site,
Okay, let's take a look
and
at that.
maybe going over the opt-out section.
Yep. Okay, so that's page 1.
And at the top.
Right there.
Lunch.
And Tori, I might recommend, you know what, Tori, do you want me to share? I have a huge monitor in front of me. Might just
Sure.
make it easier. Okay. So, and we've kind of said it twice, but the wastewater service area is limited and you gotta connect. This is what I understood from the notes were your opt-out criteria. And I had a question about whether it was the entire property is out of the floodplain or whether it's all structures and the septic system are out of the floodplain. But that's what I'd understood from the notes.
I think it should be all structures.
Structures and the system.
Yeah, structures and system, not all property.
What about, I don't want to fuss at people for having a shed or a swing set in the floodplain. I had that fight yesterday with another community.
I already
Um,
had that fight today in our community in Morristown.
Awesome.
So let's not get into that. Let's
Okay.
do actual,
Well, maybe the structures that are associated with the system, not in the floodplain.
right, because no sheds would be involved in the system. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you have a outhouse that it doesn't matter. That's not here, neither here nor there.
I think then the next bullet would be, that's really important. And that's where I wanted to, our scenario, the example that we had
Right.
with
Tori,
with Allison and
has-
Dom, and their situation and in that relatively new system and on a sandy site. So the lot size may not. I'm not sure what the compliance is for the lot size relative to the system, and setbacks to well and their particular situation. Not that we want to just look at the one system, but just, this is a good example in my mind.
So when I read, right, when I read that next thing that it says, property can support a fully compliant online septic system. Why are we adding that next line in that the system cannot be a best fix? Okay,
Well-
like sometimes I feel like these gets so detailed about. And maybe you feel like we need it to be that way, but if it says very clearly, must be compliant. And the permit must be in hand, I feel like that's,
Right. A
Like I
best
said-
fix, here's the
Yeah.
thing, a best fix technically complies with the state rules. However, it's only, the permit is only issued pursuant to a number of variances and waivers. So
Okay.
I totally hear you on that. Nobody likes to work with the Department of Redundancy Department,
yes,
but in this case, I think it's worth saying.
okay,
Because the
And
best
that-
fix is a compliance, is a permitted system.
yep, yep.
This is, no waivers. We
I-
don't want substandard systems being put back in Woken.
I get it, JB, I just,
Yeah.
to me, like.
Very
some of
good
these-
question.
These, things that go on for 8 or 10 pages, they just sort of get way too redundant for me about how much they're including. Okay, let's keep going.
Well, I did just want to add that under that bullet, JB, there was some language that is missing that the committee had discussed that might be getting to Trisha's point. About where did that go? The permit in hand, but also a letter provided by a licensed designer or professional engineer.
That's the second bullet, right?
Yep. And
So is that one not, are we looking at two different documents? I just want to,
well, yeah,
I didn't accept all changes this morning, Tori, when we were talking.
Okay. Would it be
there was
helpful?
another bullet that we're talking about, JB, and that we have in front of us. That's not on the screen.
Okay, is that, Tori, what you were referring to as language from the meeting that I wouldn't have had, or?
I just put it in the chat.
Okay, awesome.
Tori, where you put in licensed PR, can you just spell that one out for me? Professional engineer up above there. I know what it was and you know what it is, but sometimes people,
Okay, this is an incomplete sentence. I need a little help here. What is the purpose?
So. It was to read, the property can support a fully compliant on-site septic system. It cannot be a best fix. And then below it, a permit in hand from the Department of Environmental Conservation.
What? What's the,
Must be
predicate?
provided to demonstrate compliance.
Okay, so, or a letter provided by a licensed designer professional
Yeah.
engineer. What does this mean, anybody?
That was a comment from Peter about adding on having some sort of license or being qualified to evaluate soils.
We were trying to avoid everyone having to go through the cost of having to get a full permit. And
Okay,
instead, a licensed designer or a professional engineer could essentially evaluate the property, do a soils evaluation, and write a letter stating that they believed that a fully compliant system could be designed without going through the cost of the full design. Does that make sense?
yeah, I'm just not sure how we want to phrase this. I think we're almost there. How does this phrase?
well, couldn't we just say a professional engineer who is licensed and qualified to evaluate soils? Instead of putting it in quotes like that?
So the reason, the reason we added the soils part is that there are all kinds of professional engineers who don't necessarily understand
Yep,
on-site
Yeah.
wastewater systems. So
Yep.
we didn't want somebody just to have a friend who's a professional engineer write a letter saying, hey, yeah, this is all good.
yep, okay.
Okay.
This is important, and any thoughts on this, the opt-out provisions since our last meeting about this? Are we feeling good about this?
Yes.
And so the second, the one about the professional engineer stating that the property can support a fully compliant replacement system. It's not only the soils though, isn't it? More than just that? Someone who, how far away from a well it is, whether you have room.
But when,
Yeah, it's all kinds of things, Linda. Property line setbacks,
Right.
distance to wells, distance to foundation drains, all
So
kinds of things.
what kind of engineer are they, Peter?
What?
Civil environmental engineer. I mean, I wouldn't get too hung up on this. We can fine tune that language. I can give you some even more exact language on who's qualified.
I think you need to do that for us, Peter.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a pretty much an add-on onto the professional engineering license for the soils. I will find out exactly what that's called. I don't know off the top of my head.
That's perfect. If you'll take that on, we can keep moving on this one.
Yep. Okay.
There, I'm
Okay.
better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe in, looking at the other one I thought might be a good discussion for tonight, if we just jump ahead to page 3 and the capacity flow allocation established, and because we had this discussion, our rate's gonna be based on calculated flows. I think it's an important discussion. Are we,
Okay.
reading that first bullet, allocations will be determined for each property using state of Vermont wastewater rules. So,
Right.
yeah, if we can
Okay.
get into that.
But Jim, I want everybody to separate in your minds, separate your flow allocation from the rate that is charged.
Yeah.
Okay, because what we've been talking about earlier is basically fixing a charge for single family residential, possibly for, apartments, even maybe for commercial. Okay, flows determine who holds what capacity in the system. So this is how do you determine the flow allocations? And we can take this out.
So is this where, JB, is this where you would apply for a certain amount?
Yeah, if you've got a newer expanded use, yes.
Yeah.
This would say how much you're applying for. And the
Okay.
issue here is, given that you don't have a water system and you're not going to be metered, so we have to have a basis for assigning flows, both for
Yep.
permit compliance and for, general management of the
Right.
system.
Rates, yeah, okay.
Now, in that other town with a W, we kind of went round and round about the number of bedrooms, and we all, I think, implore the wise citizens of Woken to consider an allocation of 105 gallons per day for a studio or 1 bedroom, 175 for a 2-bedroom, and then 245 for 3 and up, and not trying to overcomplicate residential allocations. In all of our experience, these are responsible values.
Can
A
you give those
6-bedroom house does
again?
not mean you have 6 children.
JB, what was the 3-bedroom number?
Okay, 3 or more bedrooms. So basically a 3
245?
or more bedroom unit, 245.
Okay.
And not trying to micro or macro manage that number.
I think that's great.
Yeah. Simple is better. Yeah.
Yep.
And then the commercial, do we want to get into that now?
No, they're just on, they're basically, you go to the environmental, you go to the rules.
Okay.
EPRs, the chapter 1 rules, and you look yourself up and you say, I'm gonna have this many seats and I'm gonna have this many estimated, this many tables or gas pumps or whatever it is, and you go by the book.
So is that language, are we just going to?
Yep.
Flow determined by Vermont rules for commercial?
Correct, it's right here.
So A really refers to commercial.
Yep. And if for some reason someday we get some magic metering system that isn't a pain in the tail and you want to put it in, great, you can meter the flows. Hopefully I'll be retired.
And just for clarification from our discussion, the rate discussion previously, the municipal buildings are under what you would call under.
Correct.
And the rates.
They
Were
take
essentially
non-residential rates.
they're essentially the same as the commercial, other than the rest, it depends on who paid was in your rate options, right? The rate itself was the same from
I mean-
municipal buildings and commercial,
Yes,
except.
yeah, all
except who
non-residential.
paid. Okay.
I don't see in a system this small, getting into minutia and charging differential rates for different kinds of commercial is just gonna make people mad.
Yeah, it is gonna make people mad.
I have a question. Have we or would we consider actually metering the water supply, I would presume, of commercial units? So instead of paying, I don't know, will I allocate 1,000 gallons and pay
I don't think you want to.
$4? I'm sorry. So I'm just wondering, how does that work with a commercial unit? Do I pay for the allocation, or do I pay for my actual usage, or what are the rules? And why wouldn't we just monitor the water coming into the commercial unit?
Metering, unless right, Peter, go ahead.
I was just going to comment that we got to try to keep things apples to apples, and everything is based on design flows, which we all know are overinflated, but you're still taking up a certain amount of the system. Over time, you could do some monitoring and try to prove that you're using less water for whatever your given use is, but in general, I don't think we want to go down that route.
Oh, so the metering adds an O&M cost.
Yeah, that's
Because
rated every
you have to have
months a year.
And
So how do I as a commercial unit pay? Do I pay per allocated amount? $4 per gallon for the allocated amount? If I'm only using like nothing because construction's in progress, it'll be a couple of years before it fills out.
So I think Bruce's scenario, he has a vacant lot. He may have a 3-bedroom home there, or he may have a commercial business there, and
Someday I'm going to need 100,000.
but he's not using it now.
Gallons.
Right.
I'm not gonna pay $4 per gallon for the 1,000-gallon capacity, right?
If you're going by the allocation number, it would be based off that fixed amount. Effectively, but it would be a fixed amount for that.
1,000 gallons a day, what's the $4 a gallon?
Yeah, how does that work, JB, in that scenario where it may be a vacant lot now, but they want an allocation for a cafe, but it's not built yet. They're not using it for 3 years out or something.
That
Page 4.
is,
Page 4.
that's
Page 4.
page 4. Thank you, Linda. That's
Yep.
holding your capacity
We
allocation.
did that last week.
Okay, but 6 months.
Yeah, if you hold it for more than 6 months, you gotta start paying because you're taking up space in the system. And you are essentially imposing a cost for O&M to keep that system on standby.
Build quick.
Or give it to somebody else.
In a system this size, I think, you know, it doesn't behoove people to just buy the capacity and hang on. I don't think, and Tori and I were talking about this morning. You've got good soils. It doesn't feel like you're gonna be capacity limited. So you don't want people hanging on to capacity just because they can. So yeah, they start paying a portion of the charge after 6 months if they haven't connected. And that is done in, that is a very standard part of wastewater finance.
A portion would they be paying?
They'd be paying a portion. If you do, and this gets into the weeds, but anytime your Board of Sewer Commissioners sets its rates, you are going to note the portion that is capital related, which will include your reserve. And you would charge them, you would charge the people on standby some share related to that, you know, a fee related to that. This is getting way down the road. But you're basically charging them what it's costing, you know, you to keep that capital investment in front of their property.
For a business I guess you're worried about the cost of monitoring, the cost of O&M of monitoring. Could we possibly let businesses monitor, like the cost of monitoring can be reduced to very low value in the future?
Bruce, it seems like such a great idea until metering and metered flows are just, if you do it for one person, you got to do the whole system. And in these very small community systems, it really becomes difficult.
No, how about just for commercial units then?
That's more, again, if you do it, no, I would advise against. I think you'd be subject to challenge if you allowed it for one class of users and not another.
And the O&M cost on the putting in the meters.
On the putting in the
having to
meters.
go.
Well, that'd be the responsibility of the commercial unit to meter it.
Your problem is you have to have someone else read it, and you gotta pay
Yes.
them for that.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm set.
Okay, I was just kind of jumping ahead a little bit. We're out of time, but page 6, JB, that's essentially what we were just talking with the options 1 through 5 or variations of
Yep.
those. And
Yep.
so that would be essentially whatever that decision is would be inserted into
It's
this
written
section.
into the ordinance. Yep.
Okay. And as far as the, and that's where the select board would have to decide if they wanted to be the sewer board or create a sewer board, but you have the option in the ordinance.
Yeah.
Right, you do.
I would say wanna create a sewer board, at least people on it. And maybe one person of the select board on there.
Okay, like this says, you got options.
And I just want to bring the committee's attention to on page 8, the town authority to prevent and remediate damages. Alan's comments earlier about people putting bad stuff into the system. This would,
Restaurants and need to have grease traps, they need to be cleaned.
yeah, this would allow the town to levy fines and recoup costs if somebody puts something into the system that shouldn't, that causes damage. And I'm just phrasing that because Alan brought that issue up earlier today. So.
And would we have some assistance in filling in those numbers on page 8 for fees and charges and?
Well, that's what you do once you have, and I don't think you'll need a high strength waste surcharge. But basically you just create a schedule. Your Board of Sewer Commissioners, every year you create a schedule. You do have to say which portion is related to capital, what's related to O&M. That's pretty simple, especially for yours. Hopefully the capital is really, really small. And then we would add to this besides the usage charge, we would add, this, yours might look a little different. Yours might be flat rate, single family residential, flat rate per bedroom, non-single family, flat rate commercial, non-residential users. So yours might be much simpler than that. But then you have your billing, delinquency, you need to charge something for connecting to the system. Usually it's $300-400 if you have new users. And we could even simplify this and create a simple standby charge for capacity retained over 6 months.
Mhm.
Well, overall, I think we're in pretty good shape on this ordinance. We have to resolve the rate question, obviously, and continue that discussion at our next meeting. I did find a few locations of the infamous other town that begins with a W that we might want to find and delete.
Oh,
in the
it'll be
document.
purged. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
but we don't want to be
We have a-
contaminated.
We have a couple of Wicca practitioners down Greensboro way helping us with that.
But I think the ordinance is in pretty good shape overall. I don't know what other folks think.
I have a question. When will we approve or the ordinance? When, is it before or after the bond vote?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
Bruce,
it'll be after, but
after. But
Right.
it,
So there's
it
no
does-
hurry.
no,
Okay,
it
Great.
does though bring reassurance to your voters of what's your policy intent in setting up this system. What's governance going to look like if we approve this and build it? So it's great to do it now and just know exactly where you're going to be headed.
but not publish it exactly?
Well, not adopted.
You don't adopt it. You don't warn it. You don't take it through public hearing, but you can have it available to your voters and at least clarify that you've thought through the policies. If people are concerned about things like liability or who's the Board of Sewer Commissioners, at least you got it set up.
any other thoughts on the ordinance? Anything that we still have to resolve on this, JB, that other than the rate question?
Doing awesome.
Okay, and I think we should probably, we're about 10 minutes over here. We should probably wrap things up tonight. But we obviously have some more work on the rate structure discussion for our next meeting.
Has every 2 weeks been supposed to go on, well, just do we, I know Linda did want to talk about.
Yes. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I reached out to 3 bond attorneys and they're gonna provide by next Tuesday, I think, some kind of their hourly rate. I don't know how, but they were all seemed to be willing to work on our project. I asked them to write the language for the ballot and to guide us through the bonding process. I wanted to say, though, I was writing to the school attorney today. And at least for myself, I had always envisioned that there would be 2 ballots, paper ballots. That can't happen because the school does not vote their questions by ballot. It has to be from open meeting. So I called Belinda and she'll be talking to the Secretary of State's office, but I don't know how that's gonna work.
So it has to be a public meeting that they're voting on, no Australian ballot for the school, for the question about the siting. So we have a verbal question that has to be voted on in the room, and then a paper ballot for
Not
the,
in the same rooms.
so they'd have to go vote at the school and a public meeting and then come down here.
Could be the day before too. The day after, whatever. It dawned on me today that they can't vote by ballot.
We
You
really,
have to have a regular like town meeting or when we had our forest meeting, you know.
and ours has to be by ballot, the bond vote. It
Ours
can't
has to
be.
be by ballot, no talking, informational meeting.
I think it's essential we have those two in the same day, though. Because if we ask people to come out for 2 different days, that would not be good.
Well, that's really up to the school, but we can suggest it. They're in charge of that.
Up to the school board.
They're totally in charge of that. We aren't.
Okay, then.
But we should probably be able to be wherever it is.
Yeah.
We would need to be there to support the,
Does the bond vote have to be here, then the ballots and,
well, there's no other, where would they held it?
because they're gonna have their school meeting up at the school, right? We can't have them both in the same building.
No, because that will go from 8 in the morning to 7 at night. And school will be going on.
So we essentially have to, meeting might be that night.
It could be, yeah.
So that we would have to ask folks to come vote here and then go up to the meeting. Because it would have to be an evening.
People are around, you know, all day or after work or whatever, yeah.
Well, logistical snafu.
Yeah, it just dawned on me today.
It would be terrible if we got the bond vote and this, then we didn't get the school, if the vote got split, that would not be good.
No.
Um. Okay,
I'm gonna tell you that.
and if folks, Tori and Bradley updated the, timeline flyer to reflect our meetings between now and, June 11th. And, so at our next meeting, we're really gonna focus on the rate structure discussion again. So that's gonna be April 2nd. And anything else that we want to put on that agenda for that meeting? We got a couple of weeks. Anything pressing? JB or Seth or Tori or Emily? I see Emily's on there. You've been quiet tonight, Emily. I don't know if you have any updates or anything you want to chime in on.
No, I just heard that you guys need more money.
Yes,
Sorry.
I'm glad you
So-
heard that.
I did hear that very loud and clear. No, this is great. It's been really great to kind of listen to the conversation, and it's actually great hearing about this bond vote issue that needs to be worked through. I'm gonna bring that back to the office so to see if we have any thoughts or what another town might have done before that we can get back to you guys on too.
Okay, any last minute thoughts? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you,
Have a good
everybody.
night, everybody.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
great night.
Thank you, JB.
Have a good night.
Hey, Peter.